Hi, I am Sophia. Welcome to True Payback, where story hits different. Hit subscribe. Let's dive in.
The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I opened it. Not because I was afraid of what was inside. I already knew. My attorney Marcus had texted me the night before. Foreclosure acquisition package arrived. Standard distressed property. Thought you'd want to review this one personally. I poured my coffee, sat at the island, and slid the document from the envelope. The property address was printed in clean black type at the top of the first page. 4417 Sycamore Ridge Drive, Westfield. I set my mug down very slowly. I had grown up in that house. I'd learned to ride a bike on that driveway. I'd sat on those porch steps the night my grandmother died and cried until I had nothing left. And 7 years ago, I had stood in my parents' living room and listened to my father explain, with the calm confidence of a man who had already decided, that the $110,000 my grandmother had left me in her will was no longer mine. He said it was for the family. He meant it was for Ryan. It always meant Ryan. I picked up my phone and called Marcus. Put in the offer, I said. Full asking price. Close by end of month. There was a pause on the line. Marcus had been my attorney for 4 years. He knew when not to ask questions. Done, he said. I'll send the paperwork tonight. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and went to work. I had 13 other properties to manage. But I thought about that address all day. Growing up in the house that was never equal. My grandmother, Eleanor Marsh, was the kind of woman who made you feel like the most important person in any room she entered. She had worked as a seamstress for 40 years, saved every dollar she didn't spend, invested quietly in index funds before it was fashionable, and by the end of her life had built a modest but meaningful estate worth just over $400,000. She split it evenly between her 4 grandchildren. My share was $110,000. She told me about it 6 months before she died, sitting at her kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea. That money is for you, Lauren, she said. Not for your parents. Not for your brother. For you. To build something that belongs to you alone. I was 24. I had a job I liked at a property management company, a small savings account, and a growing obsession with real estate that I had been feeding with library books and online forums for 2 years. I had a plan. The $110,000 was going to be the foundation of something real. My brother Ryan was 28, chronically between jobs, and had been borrowing money from our parents since he graduated college with a degree he never used. He was charming in the way that certain people are charming, effortlessly and entirely in service of getting what he needed. Our parents adored him. They always had. Ryan was the one who made them laugh at dinner, who called just to chat, who showed up at holidays with big hugs and bigger stories. I was the one who remembered birthdays, helped mom with her taxes, drove dad to his doctor's appointments. I was useful. Ryan was loved. There is a difference, and I had understood it since I was approximately 9 years old. Grandma Eleanor died on a Tuesday in October. By Thursday, my father had already spoken to the estate attorney. The conversation happened that Sunday. Mom had made pot roast, which in retrospect felt like an attempt to soften something. Dad waited until we had finished eating to bring it up. Ryan is in serious trouble, he said, folding his hands on the table. He owes money to people he shouldn't owe money to. The number is significant. If it isn't settled by Friday, the situation becomes dangerous. I looked at Ryan. He was staring at his plate. We need your inheritance, Dad said. Just like that. No preface. No apology. We'll pay you back. You're stable. You have a job. Ryan has nothing right now. Family protects family, Mom added softly, which was something she only ever said when she wanted me to do something I didn't want to do. I sat with it for a moment. I thought about Grandma Eleanor's hands around her mug of tea. For you, Lauren. To build something that belongs to you alone. No, I said. The word landed like a dropped plate. Dad's expression shifted. Mom pressed her lips together. Ryan looked up from his plate for the first time. Lauren. Dad's voice was low and careful. Your brother's safety is at stake. Then he should have thought about that before he borrowed money from dangerous people, I said. What followed was 40 minutes that I do not enjoy remembering. Dad's voice rose. Mom cried quietly and strategically. Ryan said nothing, which was the most enraging thing of all. Watching him sit there while our parents dismantled my future on his behalf, not even having the decency to argue his own case. At the end of it, Dad told me he had spoken to the estate attorney and that the disbursement could be redirected if the family agreed. He said he was sorry it had come to this. He said I would understand when I was older. I was 24. I was already older than they ever gave me credit for. I said nothing. I got up, collected my coat and bag and left. I drove home with the radio off. I sat in my parking lot for 15 minutes before I went inside. I thought about calling someone, a friend, anyone, but I didn't know how to explain it without sounding like I was asking for sympathy, and I didn't want sympathy. What I wanted was to not feel like what I had built toward for 2 years had just been handed to my brother because he was careless and I was convenient. What I wanted, I realized sitting in that parking lot, was to never be in that position again. Never dependent on someone else's decision about what I deserved. Never the stable one who could absorb a loss because she was responsible and therefore had something to take. Being responsible had cost me $110,000. I decided right then that it was also going to make me something they couldn't touch. Then I opened my laptop and started a new spreadsheet. Building what they said I couldn't. I want to be precise about what I had after my grandmother's inheritance was redirected. I had $8,400 in savings, a salary of $41,000 a year, no debt, and a level of clarity about my family that I had been avoiding for years. That last one turned out to be the most valuable thing. I stopped waiting. I had been waiting, I realized. Waiting for my parents to notice, waiting for things to even out, waiting for some moment when the scales would balance. I had been patient in the way that people are patient when they still believe fairness is coming. After that Sunday dinner, I stopped believing that. And without that belief weighing on me, I moved very fast. I had been managing properties for other people for 2 years. I knew what a good deal looked like. I knew what banks wanted to see on a loan application. I spent the next 4 months obsessively rebuilding my savings, cutting everything that wasn't essential, picking up every extra hour my company offered. I read every book on real estate investing I could find. I found a mentor. A woman named Claudette who had built a 12-property portfolio starting with almost nothing in her 30s, who met me for coffee once a month and told me the truth about every mistake I was about to make before I made it. 14 months after that Sunday dinner, I purchased my first property. It was a 2-bedroom duplex in a transitional neighborhood, distressed, priced below market, in need of significant work. I got a small investment loan. I did as much of the renovation myself as I legally could. I rented both units within 3 weeks of completion. I didn't tell my family. Not out of secrecy exactly. I simply stopped sharing things with people who had demonstrated they would take them. My parents called occasionally. I was pleasant. I answered questions about work. I did not mention the duplex or the triplex I purchased 18 months later, or the single-family home after that. Ryan, for his part, reappeared at family dinners as if nothing had happened. Dad's borrowed settlement had cleared his debts. He was grateful for approximately 4 months, then restless, then borrowing again. Smaller amounts this time from friends, from our parents, the kind of borrowing that everyone pretends isn't happening. I watched all of it from a careful distance and said very little. By year 4, I had 5 properties and a property management side business handling 3 other investors' portfolios. By year 6, I had 9 properties, had hired my first part-time employee, and was generating enough monthly cash flow that I had quietly, without ceremony, quit my job at the original property management company and worked entirely for myself. None of it was glamorous. People who talk about building wealth from nothing tend to skip the part where it is relentlessly boring. Spreadsheet after spreadsheet, contractor call after contractor call, 100 small decisions that each feel insignificant until you look back and realize they were the whole architecture. I missed dinners. I worked weekends. I had a period in year 2 where I was so stretched between my day job and managing the duplex that I was running on 5 hours of sleep for 4 consecutive months. My social life narrowed to the people who understood what I was doing and why, and broadened again once I wasn't grinding quite so hard. Claudette, my mentor, told me once that building wealth is mostly just refusing to stop. Everyone starts, she said. Hardly anyone keeps going when it's inconvenient. I kept going when it was inconvenient. When it was exhausting. When I had a difficult tenant and a leaking roof in the same week and seriously considered whether any of this was worth it. It was worth it. That's not a conclusion I reached dramatically. It's just what the numbers eventually showed. I thought about my grandmother often. I thought about what she would have made of all of it. The hustle, the spreadsheets, the late nights reviewing loan documents. I think she would have recognized it. I think it was exactly what she intended. The call I had been expecting for years. Ryan called me on a Wednesday afternoon in March, 7 months before the foreclosure file landed on my counter. He had my number. I'd never blocked him, but he rarely used it. We existed in the same family orbit, appearing at the same holidays, exchanging the same surface-level pleasantries, but we had not had a real conversation in years. Not since that Sunday dinner, really. "Hey, Lauren." His voice had that particular quality it always got when he needed something. Warm, slightly hesitant, performing casualness badly. "How are you? It's been a while." "It has," I said. I was reviewing a contractor invoice and I kept my eyes on it. "Listen, I'm in a situation." Pause. "The house, Sycamore Ridge. I'm having some cash flow problems. I've missed a few payments. The bank is being aggressive about it." I set the invoice down. Sycamore Ridge Drive was the house Ryan had purchased 6 years ago, in a neighborhood he couldn't afford, with a mortgage that required a down payment contribution from our parents, who had, at the time, presented this to me as a wonderful family milestone. Ryan finally settling down, Ryan finally taking responsibility. I had smiled and said nothing. "How many payments?" I asked. 4. I did the math quickly. That was a foreclosure timeline, not a cash flow problem. "Ryan, that's not a situation. That's a process that's already started." Silence on the line. Then, I know that. I thought maybe you could help. You've done well, Lauren. Everyone says so. And we're family." There it was. We're family. The same phrase, the same logic, the same gentle pressure that had taken $110,000 from me 7 years ago. "I'll think about it," I said, because I needed him off the phone so I could think clearly. I called Marcus that evening. I explained what I knew about the property. I asked him to pull the public records on the foreclosure filing. "You thinking about acquiring it?" he asked. "I don't know yet," I said. "Pull the records first." He called back 2 days later. The filing was real, the timeline was advanced, and the bank was motivated to move the property quickly. The asking price, Marcus told me, was $267,000. Below market for the neighborhood by approximately $40,000. I sat with that number for a long time. What I did before I made the call. I did not make an impulsive decision. I want to be clear about that. I spent 2 weeks running the numbers the same way I run numbers on any acquisition. Rental comps, neighborhood trajectory, repair estimates, projected cash flow at multiple rent price points. The property was a good investment independent of everything else. That mattered to me. I was not going to make a bad financial decision to make a point. That wasn't discipline. That was indulgence. But the numbers were clean. The property would cash flow positively within the first year at market rent. The neighborhood had appreciated steadily for the past decade and showed no signs of slowing. It was objectively a sound acquisition. I also did something I had never done before on any property purchase. Called my parents. Not to ask permission. Not to announce anything. I called because I needed to understand one thing before I moved forward. "Did you know?" I asked my mother after the small talk had exhausted itself. "About Ryan's mortgage. Did you know how far behind he was?" Pause. "Too long to be innocent." "He told us it was manageable," she said carefully. "Has he asked you for money?" Another pause. "We've helped when we could. Lauren, he's your brother." "I know who he is," I said. I thanked her and ended the call. I had my answer. They had known. They had helped when they could, which meant they had given him money that didn't resolve anything. And now the house was 4 payments behind and heading to foreclosure, and Ryan had called me because he had run out of everyone else. I thought about Grandma Eleanor one more time. Lauren. To build something that belongs to you alone. I called Marcus. "Put in the offer," I said. "Full asking price." The day the deed changed hands. The offer was accepted on a Thursday. Closing was scheduled for 4 weeks later. Marcus handled everything with his usual precision, and I went about my business. Inspections, financing paperwork, the routine bureaucracy of acquisition, without saying a word to my family. Ryan called twice during that period. I let both calls go to voicemail. He said he was still hoping to work something out with the bank. He said he appreciated my patience. He said he missed me. I did not call back. The morning of closing, I dressed carefully. Not formally. I wasn't performing anything and I wasn't going to the closing to make a statement. I was going to sign documents on a property I had purchased through 4 years of obsessive discipline and 7 years of building what everyone in my family had declined to help me build. I wore the same thing I wear to every closing: dark trousers, a good blazer, clean shoes. Marcus met me in the lobby of the title company's office. "You sure about this?" he asked, not for the first time. "Run the numbers again and tell me it's a bad deal," I said. He handed me the file. "It's a great deal." "Then I'm sure," I said. The closing took 45 minutes. I signed where I was told to sign, initialed where I was told to initial, and walked out of the title company's office with the deed to 4417 Sycamore Ridge Drive in my portfolio. I sat in my car for a moment. I was not flooded with triumph. I was not overcome with vindication. What I felt was something quieter and more settled. The particular satisfaction of a thing completed, the way you feel when you've finished a very long project and the last piece clicks into place. Then I called Ryan. He answered on the second ring, which told me he had been waiting. "Lauren. Hey. I've been trying to reach you." "I know. I'm sorry I didn't call back sooner. I've been handling something." "Listen, I think I might have a solution for the house situation. There's an investor who's been..." "Ryan," I said, "I need to tell you something. The house on Sycamore Ridge closed this morning." A beat of silence. "What do you mean closed?" "The foreclosure sale. The bank accepted an offer 4 weeks ago. It closed today." They told me I had more time. There was supposed to be a 90-day. "You were past the 90 days, Ryan. You were 4 months behind." The timeline had already advanced. Silence. I could hear him breathing. "Who bought it?" he asked. His voice had changed. It was smaller now. I looked out my windshield at the parking lot. A woman was loading groceries into her trunk. A kid on a bicycle was navigating the speed bump with elaborate caution. "I did," I said. The silence that followed was the longest of the conversation. When Ryan spoke again, his voice was very careful, the way voices get when people are trying to decide whether they're angry or devastated and haven't landed yet. "You bought my house. I purchased a foreclosure property at market terms," I said. "It happened to be the house you were losing." "Lauren, do you know what Grandma Eleanor told me?" I said. I hadn't planned to say this, but I had been carrying it for 7 years and I was tired of the wait. 6 months before she died, she sat at her kitchen table and she said that $110,000 was for me. To build something that belongs to me alone. And then you needed it more than I did. And Dad redirected the disbursement. And I left that Sunday dinner and I opened a spreadsheet and I started from zero. Ryan said nothing. "I have 14 properties now," I continued. "This is number 14. I built all of them without a single dollar of family help. Not one loan, not one cosign, not one connection through Dad's contacts. Everything I have, I built from what I had after your situation was handled. I want you to know that. Not to punish you. Just because it's true and I've never said it out loud." "So what happens now?" he asked. "To the house. I'll renovate it and rent it. It's a good property in a good neighborhood. And me. You have 30 days to remove your belongings. Marcus will send the formal notice today, but I wanted to call you first." Another long pause. Then, "Dad is going too." "That's between you and Dad," I said. "I have to go." I ended the call. I sat for another minute. Then I pulled out of the parking lot and drove to my next property, a 6-unit building on the east side of town that needed a new roof, which I had scheduled to begin the following Monday. I had work to do. What happened in the days after? Dad called that evening. I let it ring. He called again the next morning. I answered. His voice had the quality it always got when he was trying to control a situation he had lost control of. Measured, deliberate, with a current of anger running just beneath the surface. "I spoke to Ryan," he said. "I assumed you would. What you did was a legal real estate acquisition," I said. "At full asking price. Through proper channels. You knew that was his house. And you knew that was my inheritance," I said. Not angrily. Just evenly, the way you state a fact that requires no elaboration. 7 years ago. You knew what Grandma Eleanor intended and you redirected it anyway. I built 14 properties without it. Ryan couldn't hold on to one with it. The silence that followed was different from Ryan's silence. Dad's silence had weight in it. The particular weight of a man who has been precise and certain his entire life, suddenly discovering that precision can work against you. "This isn't what families do," he said finally. "No," I agreed. "It isn't." He didn't have an answer for that. We ended the call without resolving anything, which was the most honest ending that conversation could have had. Mom texted 3 times over the following week. The first message said she was heartbroken. The second said she hoped I understood the position they had been in 7 years ago. The third, which arrived 4 days after the first, said she was proud of what I had built, even if she wished things had gone differently. That last one I read several times. Ryan moved out of the property in 26 days. He left it in reasonable condition, better than I had expected, honestly. A few scuffs on the walls, a broken towel bar in the second bathroom, a gate latch in the backyard that needed replacing. Nothing my contractor couldn't handle in an afternoon. I drove by on the day he vacated. I didn't go inside. I just sat in the car across the street for a moment looking at the house I had grown up visiting, the house that had been in our family's orbit for my entire life, the house that now, quietly and legally and completely, belonged to me. It looked smaller than I remembered. 7 years, 14 properties, 1 decision. The renovation took 6 weeks. New kitchen hardware, fresh paint throughout, refinished hardwood floors, new fixtures in both bathrooms. Nothing extravagant. Just good, careful work that would hold up for years. I was at the property most days during the renovation not because I needed to be. My contractor was reliable and didn't require supervision, but because I wanted to see it transform. There is something about a neglected space becoming cared for that I have always found quietly moving. Each coat of paint, each refinished plank, each replaced fixture was both a practical improvement and something else I don't have a clean word for. Reclamation maybe. Though that's probably too large a word for a bathroom faucet. I priced the rental at $1,850 per month. Slightly below top market rate for the neighborhood, because I have always found that fair pricing attracts responsible tenants and reduces turnover, which is worth more in the long run than squeezing the maximum from every unit. I had 12 applications in the first week. I selected a young couple. Both teachers, stable income, excellent references. A small dog named Rutherford who the woman apologetically mentioned 3 times as if she expected it to be a deal breaker. I told her Rutherford was welcome. They moved in on a Tuesday in June. I have not spoken to Ryan since the call in the parking lot. I don't know exactly where he's living. My mother mentioned an apartment across town. I did not ask for details. I thought about that in the weeks after the closing. Whether I had handled it the way I should have. Whether there was a version of this where I had called Ryan sooner or not at all, or where I had purchased a different property entirely and let the bank sort out 4417 Sycamore Ridge without my involvement. I don't think I would have done it differently. Not because I wanted to hurt him, I didn't exactly, but because the property was genuinely sound, and because there is a kind of honesty in following the logic of a thing all the way to its conclusion. He built nothing with what they gave him. I built everything with what I kept for myself. The property was the proof of that in the most literal possible form, and I think not acquiring it would have been a kind of dishonesty, pretending the logic didn't exist. My relationship with my parents is different now, not severed but recalibrated. My father and I speak once a month. He is more careful with me than he used to be, more deliberate, the way people become when they discover that someone they underestimated has been keeping meticulous records. I don't dislike talking to him. I simply no longer require his approval for anything. My mother and I have coffee occasionally. She has stopped using the phrase family protects family, at least around me. I appreciate that. What I want to say, and I am aware this is the part people expect to be triumphant, the part where I declare victory or announce my vindication, is that it doesn't feel like that. It feels like what it is. The logical conclusion of 7 years of disciplined choices made by someone who understood early and clearly that no one was coming to help her. Grandma Eleanor was right. The money was for me. To build something that belonged to me alone. They gave it to Ryan instead. Ryan built nothing with it. I built 14 properties without it. Those are simply facts and they require no audience to be true. But I will say this and I will say it plainly. Every time I drove past 4417 Sycamore Ridge Drive during those 6 weeks of renovation, the new paint going up, the floors being refinished, the property becoming something careful and cared for under my watch, I thought about my grandmother sitting at her kitchen table with her chamomile tea. I think she would have appreciated the symmetry. I think she would have said, "That's exactly what the money was for." And she would have been right.